You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K25. It is 6 in the morning right now for me. A nice little 10 p.m. finish for Mr. Armstrong, who's looking a little tired over there in Los Angeles. But we're breaking
Yeah,
down the NBA play-in. BJ, did you enjoy watching the night one of the NBA play-ins?
interesting. I'm ready for the playoffs already, but it was interesting. We can play in, I guess, a little drama, but no, congratulations to the Magic and the Warriors. Both seven seeds were able to pull it off this evening. But yeah, it was okay. I'm ready for the playoffs to begin.
I put a little video on my TikTok earlier today that the fans weren't too happy about, but I feel like they didn't really understand what I was saying. And this is what I was saying, okay, is the play-in is a great concept, okay? And for a team like the Warriors, where their season wasn't going well, but then they made this move and then they've managed to sneak their way in through the play-in, so on and so forth. Cool. They would have made the playoffs anyway as a 7th seed. But my point was, you're asking guys to go out there and compete for the opportunity to play a first round series against some of the best teams in the NBA. And there are some people out there who could think that some players might not be as invested in winning these playing games because essentially you're asking them to delay their summer holiday by 2 weeks. They can see Cancun on the horizon, but now you're saying I'm gonna go out and win this game, and if I win this game, the reward is getting my ass kicked by OKC in the first round. So that's what I was thinking about earlier is maybe some of these guys don't want to win the play-in as badly as their fans want them to win the play-in. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I refuse to believe that this is the thought process, but it's quite possible.
I'm not saying any names, but we're going to keep it moving. The Hawks lost to the Orlando Magic. Trae Young got off to a horrible start in that first half. And essentially, this game was won by Cole Anthony and Anthony Black coming off the bench to help the Magic get a 19-point lead in the fourth quarter and run away with the game. Trae Young ejected for a second technical, kicking the ball away from the referee. What did you take away from this game, particularly on the Orlando Magic side, as they have booked their spot in the NBA playoffs?
Well, it's not much to really say about a game like this. It was in the first quarter, the Orlando Magic just came out and they really, they put it, I think they scored like 32 points or something in the first quarter.
Yeah,
Then they had 40 some points in the fourth quarter. So it was just not a good showing by the Atlanta Hawks. I thought they
yeah,
would put up a better fight, but give the Magic credit. They were terrific. I thought they played well. Played well, especially at home. Got great contributions from a number of people, but more importantly, they really spread out the wealth.
yeah. They have five
Cole
players
Anthony,
double
Cole,
digits.
yeah,
26 off
yeah,
the bench for Cole Anthony, 10 of
Anthony,
17. Anthony
yeah,
Black had 16 off the bench. Paolo, he struggled a little bit from the field. He had 17 points, though. Franz, 13 points. And Wendell Carter Jr. was huge for them in this one with 19. The Hawks were a team that liked to get out and run in transition. Early on in this game, they couldn't get out and do that. The Orlando Magic, they were the ones who were getting out and running. They were up on fast break points. They were up on second chance points, attacking the offensive glass as well. And Trae Young was missing a lot of shots that he would usually make. And sometimes you have nights like that. They do get another go at it against the winner of Bulls Heat. So they're not completely eliminated yet. They could sneak in as the 8th seed and face the
hmm
Cavaliers.
hmm
A
hmm
credit to Orlando Magic. I think they played a really good game, and they did all of this without Jalen Suggs, who's a huge part of their team as well. So credit to that organization and the perseverance that they had. I enjoyed this showing, but let's talk about that potential first round matchup, BJ. The Celtics and the Orlando Magic. If you had to make a prediction on how many games this
Yeah,
series
you're
goes,
Celtics. Yeah, you're Celtics. I anything is possible, but if you're asking me, I think the Celtics will make fairly quick work. 5 or 6 games of the Orlando Magic. Not because you know they're just significantly better, which probably they are significantly better, but I just think they're more experienced. Um, you're starting, from the point guard, with Corey Joseph. I just don't think that's enough
Yeah,
for
shout out
them
to
to
Corey
compete.
Joseph, man. It feels like he's been
Yeah,
in the
how
league
about that?
forever.
Yeah,
Year
yeah.
14, Corey Joseph.
Yeah, yeah. He's come out. He's given them stability, veteran leadership, but I just don't think they're at the same caliber
Do you know what I
as
like
the
though?
Boston Celtics.
I like anything is possible, as you said, that anything could happen in this series. But what I do like for this Magic team, who are a young team, is they're a young team who their kind of foundation blocks are their two wings in Wagner and Banchero. Going up against two of the league's premier elite wings in Tatum and Brown is a nice learning curve for them to see what it takes to win in the playoffs up close and personal. And, the direction that this Orlando franchise is headed in, they're on a good trajectory. And even if they do lose in 5 or 6 games or whatever in the first round, and we said anything's possible. So they could take it to a game seven. They could win a series. Who knows what happens? But it's a great learning experience for Paolo and Franz to go up against Tatum and Brown and just see how that matchup goes for them.
Well, I think yeah, I think both of those guys have been, they've been around. They were in the playoffs last year, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. So these guys are ready. I think they're ready to make their mark. And both of those young players have a bright future ahead of them. However, the Boston Celtics have a great team. They are the defending world champions. And I think this is an opportunity for the Orlando Magic to continue on their journey. They're not at full, strength right now. You mentioned Jalen
Jalen
Suggs is out.
Suggs
Yeah,
and Mo
Jalen Suggs
Wagner.
is out. And but that's okay. You keep playing. I thought that I think that this is a very successful season for the Magic because they were able to get in the playoffs. So this is great for them, a great experience. And you never know. You never know what's going to happen. Paulo, he's not. He's a player. He's a pro, and he's not going to have back-to-back bad games. So I expect him to come out in game one, and we'll see what they can do. I don't know if it's enough, but let's see what they can do.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, as I look forward to every Celtics game ever. But I'm a
Mhm.
fan of the Orlando Magic, and they're apparently changing their logo and jerseys and everything for next season, going back to some of their retro styles, which is a huge hit with the fans. So I'm looking forward to seeing that too. So shout out to the Magic organization. How about that? But the second game was the kind of the main event. If we have the Hawks and the Magic as the undercard, the main event was the Grizzlies and the Warriors. And at one point, looked like the Warriors were running away with it. The Grizzlies came back from down 20 to make this a close game at the end. An interesting end to this game, with the exception of Stephen Curry's brilliance, which I think we all expect now. Some weird things happened. There were some weird calls that were made, some fouls that weren't fouls, but they got called. And then the weirdest part for me is the Grizzlies essentially throwing this game away with a 5 second violation with about 5 seconds left on the clock in the game. They couldn't inbound the ball. They didn't have any timeouts left. They couldn't get the ball in on the inbounds, turn the ball over, and they lost the game. That's an absolutely devastating way to lose a basketball game, especially when you work so hard to get back into it and persevered through. Ja Morant picked up an injury there. I don't know what his status will be for the next game. Desmond Bain gave you 30 points despite some questionable shot selection. Jaron Jackson, 18 points, but only 6 rebounds. But the lack of rebounding there was made up for by the big fella Zach Edey, who grabbed 17 balls to go along with 14 points. But for the Warriors, Jimmy Butler missed a play in. He had 38 to go along with Steph dropping 37. And that was enough to see them through. What was your main takeaway from this, from a Grizzlies perspective to start with?
Well, the Grizzlies started off very slow in this game, especially in the first half. And when you come out on the road, you want to be able to take the crowd out. And they weren't successful to that. But give them credit on this. They battled back, close game all the way down to the stretch. And this game could have won either way. So the Warriors should feel very fortunate to have won this game. But certainly Memphis, they're going to have to clean up some things. And they had a chance. They were right there. And I thought Jimmy Butler was excellent. Great job from Gary Payton to come off the bench. And I think he had like 12 points or something. Did a really great job. So when they had an unlikely contribution I didn't expect him to score in double digits, but
Quinton Post going 3 or 4 from downtown as well, off the bench.
yeah, when you get contributions like that, Steph again, shot the ball. He was terrific from from the 3-point land, and Jimmy Butler came up with some really big plays. What he said he had like 38 points or something like
38,
that.
7 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals. He did
Yeah,
have one huge turnover towards the end, which was very costly, but they ultimately survived that. A question for you though. One of your favorite players, I wouldn't say favorite players, but a player that you like and I like as well, Jonathan Kuminga. He gets a DNP, coach's decision.
I like Jonathan Kuminga. So I think this is the signal. This may be time.
He's
This may
gone.
be the time for him to move, and
I
let's
mean,
see what he can do.
he's a restricted free agent. Maybe they're trying to tank his value so they can bring him back for cheap. But I just think you're going into a series in the next round now that you've won this. You're facing the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets are a big athletic team. You need a player like Jonathan Kuminga to give you good minutes in that series. I don't know if I'm mistaken in thinking that, but I would like to have Jonathan Kuminga on the court for that series. I don't know if Steve Kerr shares that same thought process. Because if you look at that matchup, they played an epic game against each other, the Warriors and the Rockets. The battle between Şengün and Draymond and Amen Thompson guarding Steph Curry. I think having Kuminga out there gives you a nice edge. I don't know why he's not getting a run. I am convinced that if he finds another home in the NBA this summer, people are gonna wonder why he was doubted so much in Golden State because I believe in his potential. But let's talk about that series, the Rockets and the Warriors. How are you looking at that one?
But the Rockets finished with the 7th seed, correct? They
The
were the
Rockets
7th seed.
second.
Yeah, the second seed. I gotta favor the Rockets. They had an amazing season this year, and some will say they even overachieve. And when you look at their roster, you look at their depth. You just have to remind yourself how young this team is and what they've been able to achieve so quickly under Coach Udoka. So I think it's going to be very tough for the Warriors to do this. Their experience, I'm sure they're going to count on. But as this series goes, if it goes 5, 6, 7, I think it heavily favors the Rockets because of their depth, their youth. They'll play with great energy, give great effort. I expect a few skirmishes during this series, a lot of trash talking, but
Yep.
I expect the Rockets to take care of business. But you can't count the Warriors out. I think they're going to put up a fight, but I expect the Houston Rockets to advance and move on to the second round.
That brings up a question that I have for you. When you're looking at a first round playoff series, it's kind of a two contrasting schools of thought, right? On one hand, you can have experience. The Warriors are very experienced. On the other hand, you can have a young, overachieving, hungry team like the Rockets. Which of those do you favor? If you were given two teams that were going to face each other, and the facts that you were given to you didn't know the players, you didn't know the teams, you only knew that one team's experienced, one team is young, athletic, and hungry. Which team would you give the edge to? And is that like a philosophical thing that you have when you're looking at these series?
Well, let's boil it down to what it really is. It's always about matchups. Okay, so the main obstacle is how are you going to defend Steph Curry? I think the Houston Rockets have enough bodies to throw at him. I think they can do a variety of things, unlike what you saw tonight with the Memphis Grizzlies. I think you can trap him. I think you can blitz him. I think you can get the ball out of his hand, stay attached at the hip. Not so much switching with him because of how active he is off the ball. So I just think the Houston Rockets have the size, the strength, the athletic ability to really wear the Warriors down. Now, Steph Curry is very capable, like you saw this evening, and you have to play with an incredible amount of resiliency because he's going to make great shots. You can't get flustered. You can't get mesmerized by, he may go on his tangents, and you just have to stay the course with him. So I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about what Steph Curry can do. Okay, he scores 40 points. That's fine. However, when you start having these double figure contributions from guys off the bench, then that's when you get concerned. And I just think the size of the Houston Rockets is going to wear them down. You saw, Zach Edey tonight had 17 rebounds. I thought he did a terrific job. Wasn't enough, but you can see there's a gaping, hole there with the Warriors.
Yeah.
They're a very small team.
And we say it wasn't enough. They're a 5-second violation away from potentially having won this game in the Memphis
Yeah,
Grizzlies.
that's what I'm saying.
I like the matchups here. Like Şengün and Draymond will be a great matchup. Dylan Brooks and Jimmy Butler will be a very physical matchup. They'll probably start Eamon Thompson on Steph Curry, and we saw what he did to Steph Curry last time, so we'll have to see if he does this, can repeat that in the playoffs. Jalen Green and Podziemski, I think, is a good matchup. And then Van Fleet would, I guess, match up with Moses Moody, who, he did show some impressive things, especially a couple of offensive boards late in the game tonight. But I like the matchups there. What I like about Houston, though, is their depth in coming off the bench. Is you've got the versatility to play different lineups. We talked about it before. Steven Adams to give you even more size. Jabari Smith, who's another big that can stretch the floor as well. You've got Tari Eason coming in. So I like the depth of the Houston Rockets as well. However, I have to pick the Golden State Warriors in this series. The only reason, BJ, is the PTSD I have from our little trip to San Francisco in 2022. Because some of the shots that Steph hit tonight, especially down the stretch and the crowd goes crazy, that's just it's Steph Curry, man. Like, it's not a real basketball reason that I'm picking the Warriors. It's more of I've seen firsthand this guy shatter my hopes and dreams. So I hope it doesn't happen to the Rockets, but I can't go against the chef in round one of the playoffs. But I hear what you're saying, and logically, it does make sense.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I understand it. You get caught up in it. However, I really expect the Houston Rockets to really handle their business. I think they'll be ready to fight. I think they'll be physical, and I don't think I know Steve Kerr understands this. When you start talking about advancing, you have to have a team that you can go 8, 9, 10 deep. I don't think Steve is going to do that with this group. I don't know if every night I can get two guys to get, double figures. I don't know if every night I can get 38 and 37 from Jimmy. I don't know. You need those type of effort. And remember, tonight the Memphis Grizzlies played mediocre at best.
Oh, and they have so many injuries, and they've just changed their coach and so on and so forth, right? This is not a full strength Grizzlies team that we've seen in previous years.
Yeah, but they're professionals, okay? That when you're a professional and you're playing in what they call it the play in, but when you're playing with this sense of urgency, I mean, they really came out. They were very poor at the beginning of the game. So, but you know what? They have another chance at it, and that's a good thing. And we'll see what they're going to do. But I'm going to say that I feel really confident. I don't know what that means. I feel really confident with the Houston Rockets. I think
I hope so.
They will be up for the challenge.
Houston Rockets are my favorite team in the West, so I hope they win. Before we get out of here, real quick, there was breaking news in the NBA. Mike Budenholzer fired by Phoenix. I don't think there's too much to talk about. The Phoenix Suns missed the play-in, let alone the playoffs. And they've not got really any options to change their roster, so they're going to have to change the coach. Okay. Are we surprised? This is now what is this now, BJ? Their third? Are they still paying Monty Williams and still paying Frank Vogel? And
I think that, yeah.
Matt Ishbia, I pray for the day that my money is as long as Matt Ishbia's money, because that's crazy work. He's paying guys not to work for him.
I just saw something. I think it was like 80 million or something that they're paying just for coaches or something like that. Yeah, you'll see. You'll see. I think the interesting thing that will occur up there is one, who they're going to hire. I think this is going to be a very interesting hire for them, because this really has to. Now they're 0 for 3 basically. I know he's hired only 2 of the coaches. Monty Williams is there when he purchased the team, but it's going to be interesting to watch And to see James Jones, I expect probably James Jones to stay on staff as the what president or GM there. So it's going to be interesting to watch. How this is going to play out. What KD is going to do there. What Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. So
Yeah,
I think
there's
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 more
a lot of
changes to come.
rumors about Kevin Durant finding a new home this summer. So there is a lot of changes, and a lot of changes also in New Orleans. David Griffin was fired as the president of basketball operations there. Joe Dumars is reportedly going to replace him, and the reports today are that ownership has demanded that he trade Zion Williamson this summer as one of the first things on his agenda. What are your thoughts on all of that happening in New Orleans?
So I didn't catch the last part of that. Say that again?
The report was that ownership is saying that they have to trade Zion Williamson this summer.
Interesting. That's interesting. Did they give why? Is that was just a report? I don't understand.
Hoops Hype has reported the ownership will mandate Dumars to keep Willie Green and trade Zion. This is what I've heard. It's possible the Phoenix Suns situation impacts Willie Green, but this is the plan I'm hearing. So they want to keep their coach, but they want to trade Zion Williamson. That's what the report says. I don't know how much stock we're putting into a report, but that's what the stock says.
Let me get this straight. Okay. And this will be my only pushback for something like this. So Joe Dumars has had a Hall of Fame career, correct? As an executive.
Absolutely.
Okay, he's had a Hall of Fame career as an executive, Hall of Fame career as a player. To put it mildly, the Pelicans have struggled as of late. Let's
Well, I mean,
put
they've
it
always
quite
struggled.
lightly.
The Pelicans have never really had success.
Okay. Then you're going to hire a Hall of Fame executive and then attach, and I'm not saying that they did that, but then you're going to attach what they should do. Now, we just saw this happen with the Phoenix Suns when all of a sudden we just saw this stuff. So I'm going to properly ignore the report. And okay, if you want to trade Zion, I can understand that if that is the case. But certainly I wouldn't announce it before.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
I'm going to just move on to the next, the next segment here. And let's see how this plays out. Now, I don't know what to say about that. It seems like amateur hour for someone to report that. It seems very okay, why announce it right now in April? Like, what do you get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, here I'm coming. Like, why would you do that? Okay, you know what I mean? Like, why would you announce what's going on here? So I'm going to humor, and I don't even know if these things are even commenting about it. Like,
yeah. I mean, I can see the logic. You don't want to end up like the Sixers with a star who's great when he plays, but is often injured. But like you said, I would never announce that I'm trying to trade my superstar, let alone that I'm going to force my new president, who I've just hired like an hour ago, that I'm going to force him to do it. I don't get that. I don't know if I believe the report.
yeah. No,
It may
you
just
can't.
be rumors in
I,
the media, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of why rumors are there. But
Joe Joe understands the task at hand. He went to 6 NBA, conference finals.
Yep.
He went to the NBA finals as a executive twice. They won a championship. One of those he's won as a player. I think he has that part covered. I think
You might know a thing or two about this basketball thing.
Yeah, I think he's got that part covered. So let's just let's see what happens. I think he's going to do what all excellent executives do. They're going to come in, assess what's going on, see what's going on, and then make the appropriate moves. And, he has phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal leadership. Um, if we're lucky, hopefully he'll come on the show and maybe might share a thing. We could learn a thing or two.
Absolutely.
So I'm pretty good, but yeah, these reports now, I think,
Hey,
come on,
everyone wants the retweets, B. Everyone wants the clout. Everyone wants the
yeah,
boost.
yeah.
We don't play them
And
games over
just
here. Just real basketball.
no, you can't. I don't think he's been around long enough. He knows
I
what he
think he
sees.
knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't think he knows what he's doing.
So you want to move on to the next segment? Here's the next segment. Um,
Please.
the next segment is we will be back tomorrow breaking down the Bulls and Heat and the Mavericks and the Kings. So subscribe to the show because we are going to be breaking down every game.
And who's the second game?
The what remains of the Mavericks versus the Chicago Bulls West, aka the Sacramento Kings.
Okay. Well, here we
Our
go.
resident play-in Kings, DeRozan and Levine. We'll be back breaking those down tomorrow, and then we'll be here every day of the playoffs. I will not be sleeping until the end of June. I will feel awful, but I'm doing this for you guys. So if you could please subscribe, it would make my day. And while you're there, feel free to give us a little 5-star review on Spotify and the Apple charts. Help us boost us up in those algorithms. That would be absolutely fantastic. BJ, I'm very jealous that you live on the West Coast of America. Any companies based on the West Coast of America who want to hire me, let me know because this has been the hardest season to stay awake and watch the NBA. I'm over 30 years old now, so yikes.
Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy. So we're going to do this playoff run, but, you know, something's got to change next season. I've got to be in a different location for the playoffs because this is now 6:30 in the morning and we're wrapping up the show. It's not ideal. It's not ideal, but I do it for you guys, the people who need the realness, because somebody's got to do it. So here we are. BJ, appreciate you.
appreciate you.
We'll be back tomorrow
Okay.
with more. Until next time, get buckets.